What is a hybrid display? A trade show display that runs on electricity and gas. Gene splicing and cross-pollination research at a secret basement lab at McCormick Place. One more way to confuse exhibitors about portable, modular, and custom exhibits, baffle them with BS. Or D, a display constructed primarily of engineered aluminum extrusion, tension fabric, and other custom or off-the-shelf components. Well, the correct answer obviously is D. Now let me kind of explain a little bit what I mean, because there's one term in there that I think can be a little confusing to people, and that's the term of engineered aluminum extrusion. So what is engineered aluminum extrusion? We make a distinction at Classic between routine aluminum tubing used for overhead structures and such as aero versus engineered extrusion like module, AGAM, and octanol. Engineered extrusions are more than simple structures. They are a framework for expansion accessories. That said, we are not alone in occasionally putting push-button connector tubing designs in our hybrid galleries. Why? Well, for one thing, it's easier than creating another product line, and we'll see and we'll cover those product lines today, and adding to the overall confusion. But in general, push-button tubing designs are limited as weight-bearing structures and as accessory options. So why the hype? Perhaps no term is more hyped and less understood in the exhibit industry than the word hybrid. Nearly every exhibit manufacturer and custom builder refers to their latest designs as portable hybrids, modular hybrids, or even custom hybrids. The word hybrid has come a little bit ubiquitous on any kind of structure that you see out there. Why hybrid? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple: value. More than ever, exhibitors are demanding displays that do everything: assemble quickly, look custom, ship light, and reconfigure. Just a few years ago, that would have been impossible, but not anymore. And there's two reasons for that. The first, engineered aluminum extrusion. We've always had engineered aluminum extrusion going back, even back as far as SEGUE, but it was never used in this format. As you may recall, it was always used for rentals, and it was the ugly stepchild of every trade show. But the advent of tension fabric graphics has kind of transformed that. So suddenly you can have a beautiful display using aluminum extrusion and tension fabric graphics. Even more, aluminum is attractive, structural, and lightweight. Tension fabric is vibrant, durable, and cost-effective. Together they serve as a creative foundation for displays priced from $3,000 to $2,500. For the past 30 years, the exhibit world has been divided into two worlds: portable modular displays or custom exhibits. Portable modular displays have been dominated by pop-up panel displays and modular laminate exhibits. These systems have well-defined configurations, components, and accessories, but limited design flexibility. Custom exhibits, built primarily from wood, have offered exhibitors endless design possibilities, but are rarely portable or modular. So, depending on your perspective, hybrid displays either blend the best of portable modulars and custom, or they are a compromise of all three. I think it's important to really, if we look back, to kind of look at the history and the beginning of where hybrids came from. Now, while exponents and luminance didn't invent hybrids, I think we would all agree that exponents did popularize them. Even if the first ones didn't have tension fabric graphics, had more kind of vinyl graphics. They designed a look that stuck and that forced all of us, every other design manufacturer out there, to evolve or really face extinction in one way or another. And Classic is no different. Classic recognized back in 2002, 2003 that this was a trend that was going to continue, that it wasn't the flavor of the month. So we did what nearly everybody did, is we created our own version of the luminance. Now, when we created those versions, we decided to take a slightly different tactic. Instead of having hard canopies and kind of vinyl graphics, what we did is we went down the path of tension fabric with tension fabric canopies and tension fabric graphics. No one else at the time was doing that, but we felt that that was a niche that we could exploit, and it was a niche that we could exploit with our partner, Optima Graphics. So our first designs looked very similar, or at least the ones you see in the upper left-hand corner and the bottom look very similar to Luminance designs. But we learned pretty quickly, within about a year, that that was a recipe for disaster. Simply head down the path of mimicking and copying what Luminance was doing meant that we were all involved in a race to the bottom, and the race to the bottom was price. And we had an advantage. The advantage that we had at Classic Exhibits is that we had shelves and shelves and shelves of extrusion. Now, we certainly didn't have as much as we have now. Our inventory is much broader and much deeper than it was then. But because we were also an aluminum provider, in addition to being an exhibit builders, we had access to more aluminum, at least access within our building, than most of our competitors had. So we headed down a different path very quickly, and we started designing looks with aluminum extrusion and tension fabric that were very, very different than the Luminance line. And you can see here just a couple examples. Even from the beginning, you can see we were adding curves, we were doing kind of funkier things with accessories, and adding different counters and pedestals to the hybrid look, so it wasn't that typical wedge. Let's kind of look at a pretty typical hybrid display. And this is the Visionary Designs. It's one that I'm sure as a group you are all very, very familiar with. It's the iPhone, or the VK1032, and its larger sibling, which would be the VK2044. But let's just kind of look at this and see what some of the basic components of a hybrid exhibit is. In this case, this one's a little bit different, but in this case, obviously you have engineered aluminum extrusion, and in this case, classic module. And this one has both round extrusion in RR91 and also square extrusion in Q914. So you're seeing square and round extrusion and also round extrusion. You're seeing tension fabric graphics, large format tension fabric graphics here, and large tension fabric graphics on the other side there. These are both attached using Velcro. That was the preferred method that we went down from the beginning and that we stuck with. We never went down the pole pocket approach. We never felt that the pole pocket approach was viable. It was too difficult to install, and you couldn't, with the pole pocket, you couldn't consistently have control over whether you were removing any of the wrinkles in the materials at that time. Here you have wings that are either made of flex or centra, or could be printed on. The header here can either be tension fabric or direct print graphic at the top. Then you're also looking at a workstation that uses round extrusion. And then the cabinet out front has laminates, which I'm not pointing out the laminates, and then vinyl applied to the laminate there. So this is a pretty typical hybrid in the sense that you've got engineered aluminum extrusion, tension fabric, and other components. For instance, in this case, you're dealing with laminates, and you're dealing with direct print and accessories. And here you have literature brochures that are obviously accessories. All right. But when we start thinking about a hybrid, it's easy to kind of categorize them. And I'm going to ask you to kind of broaden your view while constraining it at the same time. So what is a hybrid? Well, a hybrid can be something as simple as a square, the SEGUE Sunrise, that doesn't require any tools to assemble at all. Or it can be curvy, like a Magellan VK2051 that uses one extrusion, the Z45 to build everything, and novice-assisted assembly. It can be a tabletop. Sacagawea tabletop, for instance, can be a small tabletop. It can be an island, or it can be something really unusual like SEG or TSP extrusions that we bent and curved and used SEG graphics. Those are all hybrids because the base of all of those is engineered aluminum extrusion and tension fabric in one form or another, whether it's Velcro, tension fabric graphic, or silicone edge graphics. So one of the things that happened over time is Classic started adding hybrid lines. So you've got visionary designs, then you've got Sacagawea and Magellan and SEGUE and Perfect 10 and Euro LT hybrids. So really, what's the deal with all these hybrid lines? Why does Classic have so many different hybrid lines versus our competitors, which kind of lump all their hybrids within one category? Why? Why did Classic head down that path? Well, let me kind of explain that to you. Let me give you a little bit of a history, please. The Classic History Channel version of why there are so many different hybrid designs from Classic. So back in the day, our first line was Visionary Designs, or really when it started off, it was called Visions by Classic, and then it changed to Visionary Design. It was intended to be the single product line for all of our hybrids. Everything got lumped in that, and then we were all using, all the manufacturers out there, including Classic, we're using larger extrusions like Q914 or R125, which are the larger, bulkier, structurally beefy extrusions out there to build all of their systems. And certainly, as I said, we were no different than that. So that really started in 2002, 2003. Then, not long after that, customers asked us, because the Euro LT modular laminate system was so popular, could we start to blend some of the things that we were doing with Classic module extrusions and tension fabric in with Euro LT? Well, that was relatively easy to do, and so we started designing things that combined laminate modular panels, the ability to put those together without tools, and then also with extrusions and tension fabric and having larger format graphics that went with these laminate panels. And so that product eventually started to evolve from just Euro LT modular laminate to kind of Euro LT modular hybrids. Then in about late 2005, 2006, we noticed something as a company. We noticed something in the market that no one else noticed. No one else saw that. What we saw was that there was a host of solutions out there that were in the $3,500 and less price point. Pop-ups, panel systems, general panel systems, things like expression. There was a lot of those products that looked very portable that were about $3,500 and less. And then there were systems, and including hybrid systems in there were a lot of those, and we were in that category, that started at about $10,000 and went north. But there was nothing in the sweet spot between $10,000 and $3,500. There was no design-centric, no kind of interesting, exciting, portable, modular lines out there that truly hit that $3,000 to $10,000 range and up, that were design focused. So we started developing the Perfect 10 line, the Perfect 20 line, and launched that in mid-2006. And that product, as we'll see here a little bit later, came in within about a $5,000 price point, and it took off immediately. It was an instant success for us because it served, as I said, it hit that sweet spot that other people weren't getting. Well, that's actually should be about, it's 2009. So for about the next 2 years, Perfect 10 did really, really well. Then we hit the recession. Well, in the midst of the recession, one of the things that we noticed, one of the things we were hearing from distributors is that products like the Perfect 10, at that price point, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 as opening price point, were no longer selling. They were having difficulty getting people to buy in because people's budgets were obviously compressing to buy those. So we looked at what we could do, how we could design another hybrid, and what we could do with that hybrid to meet a price point that was more acceptable. And so we launched Magellan. And Magellan was primarily a Z, using the Z45 extrusion, and the Magellan was about $1,500 to $1,600 less than Perfect 10. We launched that product. In particular, the first product we launched was the Magellan Miracle, and it did, again, extraordinarily well. It sold like hotcakes. You know, we were seeing those go out the door all the time, and it really revitalized the hybrid market again. Well, kind of imagine another year, year and a half later when we are in the depths of the Great Recession. At that point, you know, no one has any budget. The price points are even lower, and our distributors have come back to us and said, were struggling even selling $4,500, $4,700 extrusions. So we looked at that market, and we, again, went back to the drawing board, and we designed Sacagawea. And Sacagawea came out, as I said, another $1,500 less than where Magellan was. And, again, that product came out of the gates. Not only did very, very well, it's the most successful product launch we've ever had in our entire existence. It was an amazing hit for us across the board. And again, I'll explain that to you a little bit more of why that's a hit here in a few minutes. And the last product line was SEGUE, and SEGUE really kind of evolved. It was more of an evolution than it was a conscious choice. As more and more people started to ask us for silicone edge graphic design, and we designed those silicone edge graphic designs, at first we simply lumped them in with visionary designs. We put them within that category. But it became apparent as we saw those designs growing in popularity that it confused people to have them lumped in visionary designs. So we pulled them out of it and made it a separate line so that those who wanted those type of designs could find them there. Now the difference between SEGUE and between all the other ones on there is it's not price point limited, in the sense that it doesn't have boundaries in the same way that Sacagawea has a certain high and a low, and it's meant to be kind of the opening price point. Perfect Ken is kind of a higher design, but strictly portable hybrid without necessarily being a visionary designs and requiring tools. SEGUE hits both ends. SEGUE has both the least expensive kit that we sell, which is the SEGUE Sunrise, and some of the most expensive 10x10s and 10x20s that are on Exhibit Design Search. So let's talk a little bit about each one of those products and what makes each one of those products different. And I think by the end, those of you who didn't understand the distinction between Sacagawea, Magellan, Perfect Ken, Visionary Design, and SEGUE, it'll make a lot more sense than it has in the past. I'm not going to go into Euro LT because Euro LT kind of makes sense. Euro LT, because it's a laminate, more laminate than tension fabric, it kind of sits by itself off to the, off, I wouldn't say off in the corner, but it's a slightly different animal within the hybrid worlds. That one's easy to understand. These other ones are not. So Sacagawea first. Let's really talk about what drives the price of hybrid systems. And it's really very, very simple. What drives the price of hybrid systems is three things: metal, graphics, and accessories and customization. So let's talk about metal first. Metal, the price, how metal is factored into a hybrid and how it affects the price is how large that extrusion is. Larger extrusions are more expensive than smaller extrusions, and whether we're dealing with straight extrusions or curved extrusions. When you have to curve the extrusion, that becomes more expensive, it requires more labor, and in almost all cases when you curve metal, you have to re-anodize it or powder coat it, so there's an added expense to the curving. Now, curving obviously adds an additional design element, so curves are very attractive and very popular, but it does boost the price. So remember, metal, graphics, and then lumping together accessories and customization. On Sacagawea, Sacagawea is within the hybrid line, as a line is the opening price point, starting from $3,400 for a 10x10 and $6,848 for a 10x20. Sacagawea has minimal curved metal. It's mostly straight metal. It has one medium-sized tension fabric graphic that's not 8 feet tall, that's 7 feet tall, as you can see right here. It has really one. It has fewer accessories than some of the other lines, and it's really inlines only. And as a result of having simply straight metal, primarily having a smaller smaller tension fabric graphic, only one, fewer accessories, we can price that particular line more aggressively. And the extrusion that's used, at least on the vertical on that, is the S40 that you see here on the right. Now, here is the opening price point, Sacagawea, and here is more of a high-end one. As you move up the scale, we start to add more looks to the canopy, the workstations, and other elements to it. Now, within every product line, I'm giving you the rule, but there's always the exception. And the exceptions are things within Sacagawea like the PS series. Well, the PS series has lots of curves, a lot more graphics, but the basic building blocks for Sacagawea on this one are exactly the same. Knob assisted assembly on it, and Velcro applied graphics on the back, and also die-cut foam packaging. It's all the same, but it's a little bit fancier look. Let's move on to Magellan. So Magellan is that next step up. So what makes Magellan different? Well, with Magellan, you're dealing with mostly curved metal as opposed to straight metal. You're dealing with one extrusion with a Z45, and that's a fairly economical extrusion, so it can still be cost-effective even though we're using curves. You have larger tension fabric graphics. The tension fabric graphics go up to 8 feet. You have more tension fabric graphics. Here you actually have two of them, one here and one here, and this is the Magellan Miracle. It's knob-assisted assembly, so most of the assembly is with knobs, although it may require some tools. The Velcro, the tension fabric graphics is attached with Velcro, and it has die-cut foam packaging. So once again, more curves, one primary extrusion, two larger tension fabric graphics, limited accessories, and in this case, end lines only for Magellan. So we bumped up about, as you can see, about 1,000 to 12 or 1,300 compared to where we were within Sacagawea. And again, this is a pretty standard Magellan Miracle, but as always, there are exceptions within the line, and here is a more expensive exception. You just added a lot more design elements on it and a lot more graphics and a lot more curves. Perfect 10. Now, Perfect 10 is the next step up, and the reason Perfect 10, there's a lot of reasons why Perfect 10 is more expensive than either Sacagawea or Magellan. But the most obvious reason is, even though it uses S40 extrusion just like Sacagawea does primarily, it's almost all curves. And they're extreme curves. And they're curves that, because of the nature of the curves, we don't simply anodize them. We actually powder coat the extrusion after we bend it. And that's a higher cost than anodizing. You have larger tension fabric graphics. You have all knob assembly, so this is entirely a portable system. You have 7 powder coat color options, and I'll show you some of those here in just a second. Far more accessories, it's Velcro fabric, and it uses die-cut foam packaging. So more curves, far more curves, a lot more accessories, larger tension fabric graphics, and more standard options. So you can see the basic unit there on the left, and then a higher end unit there on the right. You can tell it's clearly a more design-centric or design-focused item. And when I told you one of the great things about Perfect 10, and the beauty of Perfect 10, is that you can choose between 7 powder coat colors at no additional charge. Now, rarely does anyone choose anything but silver, and I think they don't choose the other colors because sometimes they're not aware of it. But there are 7 colors, and I'm going to show you most of them now, from red to blue to green to black to even yellow. And there is no increase in cost to your client to the retail cost to choose any of those particular color frames. And of course, there's always the exception, and this is the exception to the rule. So far more accessories, using a larger monitor mount, and more involved in it. Okay, visionary design. Visionary designs, think of visionary designs as whatever you want a hybrid system to be. So visionary designs can pull from any of the extrusions that we carry, can have any of the accessories, any of the customization that we do. It's really kind of, while we have a lot of kits, in fact, far more kits within visionary designs than we have within any of the other lines, it gives you the opportunity to kind of do ground-up design. It's whatever you want it to be. We will make visionary designs. It'll be within the visionary designs line. It tends to be more structural in the sense because it uses larger extrusion and have more accessories. So it's upscale designs and accessories, larger extrusion. It's inlines and islands. It's entirely a tool-based assembly. and it uses jig packaging. In most cases within visionary design, and I'm saying in most but not all cases, it's going to go into a crate, whether it's a smaller 4x8 crate or a larger crate in some way or another. These are two of the standard kind of building blocks, the RR125 and the Z, and the Q914, although we have been going a lot to RR91 and the S44, which are both smaller versions of those two. And again, this is a very typical visionary design. As you can tell from a design element, it's a step up from the other lines that you've seen out there. And here's a 10x20, one design we've sold a great deal of. Larger attention fabric graphics, a lot more attention fabric graphics. They're not curved, they're angular. And an island. The last one is SEGUE. As I told you, SEGUE has less to do about price than it has to do with the fact that it's using SEG graphics. SEGUE represented, just like the word segue in a movie, when you have a segue from one transition, one scene in a movie to another, where as an industry, we are transitioning, not completely, but we're doing a transition here from tension fabric graphics, primarily that were Velcro applied, to tension fabric graphics that are silicone edge applied. There is kind of that segue between the two. So all of SEGUE products use SEG or TSP, classic module, TSP extrusion, and here are two examples of those that have that silicone welting that goes in the groove. The reason people choose SEG or SEGUE is for a couple reasons. The primary reason is they're looking for ways to minimize the look of the extrusion. They want to see more graphics and less metal. And because of the nature of SEG, you're going to see simply in many cases, a 1/16th of an inch of reveal on the extrusion as opposed to seeing an entire side of the extrusion. The other is that SEG by its very nature, although this isn't always true, but by its very nature, if done correctly, is pretty idiot-proof. It's such that because it can only go in one way, unless you put it upside down or sideways, because it can only go in one way, it's going to go in that groove, ideally every time if the graphic is cut to the right side. So it's often used, SEGUE is often used by the marketing department when they think to themselves, okay, I've got someone, and no offense, they've got someone in sales that's going to set this up. They don't really care how they set it up. They're going to mess it up because they always do. A pop-up is a good example. They're going to set it up and they're going to just kind of throw the panels up there. They aren't going to make sure that they're aligned correctly, and it's not going to look great. Well, with SEG, it's going to look perfect every time if you take just a moment of care to put those within. So that's what makes an SEG. And as I said, within the SEGUE line, it can be high design, it can be lots of curves, interesting curves, and one of the core competencies of classic exhibits, as opposed to some of our competitors, is the ability to curve SEG or TSP extrusion. And I really encourage you, those of you who, if you haven't signed up for the webinar tomorrow on SEG with Optima and moderating being given by Kevin, it's a really, really good overview of what SEG is, what the metals are, and the direction that the industry is going in. I've seen the PowerPoint. Kevin's done a terrific job of pulling that together. So SEG can be more expensive options, or it can be less expensive options like the SEGUE Sunrise. And this is obviously a 20-foot version that can actually even hold a monitor. And SEGUE can be island, obviously. So anything else within that hybrid line, anything else that is included other than the lines that I've talked about? Well, of course. There are tabletops, anything from SEGUE tabletops to P10 tabletops, to Sacagawea tabletops, to Visionary Design tabletops. If you've spent any time at all in our tabletop gallery, you'll know that there is a wealth of tabletops. And why are there so many? And the reason there are so many is because of you. Because if we're going to point the finger at someone, we're going to blame you. Each time we've launched a line, whether it was Sacagawea or Magellan or Perfect 10 or SEGUE, almost immediately you have come back to us and said, all right, is there now a tabletop version of that? And we've said, well, that just makes sense. So let's create a couple tabletop versions of each one and see how they do. And in fact, lines like SEGUE, which those tabletops were only introduced probably about 6 to 8 months ago, have done extraordinarily well. And the Sacagawea lines have done extremely well too, in spite of there being higher price points to those as opposed to a briefcase tabletop or a simple pop-up. What else? eSmart Designs. As you know, we have a partnership and a financial stake within Ecosystem Sustainable Designs. Almost all of their designs, in fact, I think all of their designs are hybrid in nature, but they're hybrid and they're obviously sustainable because they're using slightly different fabrics, using fabrics that are made from recycled soda pop bottles, using the same extrusion that we use because that extrusion is actually 72% recycled post and consumer aluminum, and then using other methods to make it sustainable, whether it's sorghum or bamboo or other elements, or even kind of recycled materials within the flex and the centrifan. Rentals. Our rental division is all extrusions, be it 10 by 10s to islands exhibit. And the great thing about that is because of the nature of extrusion, the nature of how it works, it is easily modifiable. It's easy to reconfigure. So when it comes to the world of rentals, yes, there are kits out there, but getting a kit that works for you or taking the existing components that are on our shelf within the rental division or modifying those is relatively straightforward in order to get the design and the look that you need. We can't always do it, but 9 times out of 10, we can accommodate the look that your client wants with some compromises. And then counters and workstations. So counters and workstations obviously are the ones I'm showing here are using engineered aluminum extrusion and primarily center inserts, but we're seeing a lot of applications where they're using tension fabric as well. And then lastly, SEGUE wall frames. This is actually kind of a growing business of ours where we're using one extrusion called TSP10, the very narrow profile extrusion, and because of our ability to bend that extrusion, easily bend that extrusion, we're seeing more and more examples where people are using that and instead of as a means of using wall art and then changing out that wall art pretty quickly at a cost-effective, being very cost-effective. Okay, so I hope that we've come to the end of this, and that that the difference of what a hybrid system is, how hybrid systems are priced, and the distinction between all of our hybrid lines are pretty clear. If it's not, I certainly encourage you to within our blog, our Trade Show Tales blog, there are some postings out there such as Sacagawea versus Magellan, P10 Vision Designs. You can read out there. The ABCs of classic hybrid display systems, and what the heck are hybrid exhibits. I also have another one that I'm writing right now about hybrids as well that I'll post here probably in the next 2 weeks. All right. Now I am done, and let me answer any questions you have. Let me answer the ones first that were sent to me through the question. Are we going to get this PowerPoint so I can listen and not take notes? Yes, you will. I can send you both the PowerPoint, and we've also recorded it, so there'll be a recorded version, but I'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint. It's a pretty large PowerPoint. What I'll do, though, is I'll save it as a PDF, which doesn't save perfectly, but you'll get the gist of what's on there. Just send me an email letting me know if you want the PDF, and I'll have to do it. And I'm trying to read the next one. Thank you, Troy. How exactly do hotcakes sell? Secondly, how do you avoid the pucker or smallish bubble of extra fabric that sometimes occurs at the completion point of SEG? I'm going to answer that question, Troy, but I'm also going to encourage you to listen to the SEG webinar tomorrow because I know that's one of the things that they're going to talk about. But there really is an easy answer to how do you eliminate that pucker. And this is how you do it, is on all SEG graphics, and let's just assume that we're dealing with a square or rectangular SEG. First thing you have to do is you have to put the SEG extrusion in all 4 corners. So you have to start in all 4 corners and put it in an inch or 2 within all of those corners. Then you go to the middle of the verticals and the horizontals and you insert the SEG in the middle section of that length. And then from that length, then you go towards the corner in both directions. That almost always eliminates whatever pucker may have occurred within it. Really, and that's simply the trick. But the reason behind it is, unlike Velcro, which when you stick Velcro on, the Velcro stays. SEG, because it's in the groove, SEG has a tendency to migrate. It's going to migrate in that channel. And if you've ever stuck the SEG in on the channel and pulled it, you'll see that it pulls down. So you have to work to prevent that SEG from migrating from the corner towards whatever direction you're moving as you're inserting the SEG on there. And the easiest way to do it is to simply use the technique that I gave you. Another technique is just to insert it in all 4 corners, and as you're pushing that silicone welting in, push it in and then push it up towards the corner so that you're preventing it from migrating. And what's the next one? Thanks, Chris. Sorry, I won't read that one. This one says, let me get this one, hold it a second. Direct printer tension fabric, do you suggest, this is by Ingrid, one over the other by which product or what is the difference? Okay, this is really, this can be one of the confusing points, and it can be the confusing points within our systems. The rule of thumb is whenever you're looking at a hybrid system from plastic, the larger graphics, the significantly larger graphics on the unit are tension fabric. You always want to use tension fabric in those situations. The smaller graphics are almost always direct print on there. And the reason we headed down this direction, and we've gone 2 paths, is when we first started with Visionary Design, distributors told us that please include the price of the tension fabric graphic within your kit price because we don't understand tension fabric, we don't know how to price it, it doesn't make any sense to us, and we can't print it in our shops. So when it came to Visionary Design, that's how we started. So it would always include the tension fabric graphic, but not the direct print graphics. Then over time, as we introduced some other products, Perfect Kin, for instance, what you told us is, oh, what the heck, we don't really want to be bothered with printing the direct print graphics in our shop. They're small, they're 16 inches. Just include those prices within the entire kit price of what you're doing. So beginning with Perfect Kin, Sacagawea, Magellan in most cases, we started, the kit price would say includes all tension fabric and direct print graphics. So you have to be careful within the kits. I would say a good 80% of Visionary Designs will say includes tension fabric graphics only, and if you don't know the difference between the tension fabric in that kit or the direct print on there, please call your project manager. They'll be happy to point it out. But I can tell you is a good example, and I'm going to go back here. I'm going to kind of escape out of here, out of the PowerPoint. And let's go back to the slide that shows the VK1032, for instance. And it really is pretty obvious in this case, is if it's a smaller graphic like this, it's obviously a direct print. You can't really do, and you wouldn't want to do a tension fabric in a smaller one like this, or like this, it's just not cost effective. If it's a larger one, it's clearly tension fabric in through there. The ones that get muddied a little bit are things like this header up here. Because the header can be either tension fabric or direct print, just depending on what you want. Really, if it's going to go into a crate in this situation, you can use direct print because it'll fit just fine. If it was going into a rotomolded case, for instance, you wouldn't want it to go in. You wouldn't want it to be a direct print. You would want it to be tension fabric, simply because it packs down smaller and it weighs less. All right. Are there any other questions out there? Please, looks like I've exhausted the questions that people have asked. I hope, I'm going to wrap this up here, but if you have a few questions, please, feel free to ask those questions as I'm wrapping up here. I guess the last thing I want to say, obviously I want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar about hybrid exhibits. I hope it was informative, and I hope that it went fast enough for you that it didn't drag in any way. If you still have questions about the hybrid systems, feel free to give me a call. What I will do, and I often do this with people, I will go into Exhibit Design Search, and I'll kind of walk through more of the products within Exhibit Design Search, show the difference between Sacagawea, Magellan, Visionary Designs, and those product lines to make it a little clearer as far as the distinction. Really the rule of thumb, though, and I'm going to escape out of the PowerPoint, really the rule of thumb for you, and let's go to Exhibit Design Search, is the rule of thumb is, let's see how fast this moves. It always moves slower when we're on. The rule of thumb is, if we're looking at the hybrid lines, and I'm going to kind of make two exceptions, is within Exhibit Design Search, it moves from lowest to highest. So Sacagawea to Magellan to Perfect 10 to Visionary Designs on that first row. SEGUE, we've already talked about, is an exception because it has both the least expensive and one of the more expensive lines, or kits within the hybrid line. And then obviously the eSmart displays by Ecosystems have their own category, and they run the gamut from very, very affordable to more expensive at the same time. And I think I got one more question. All right. Are the kits including printed central graphics or unprinted in the cost at this time? Again, Allison, it depends on the kit. It is inclusive within Sacagawea, most Magellan, most Perfect 10. It's going to include both the printed or the direct print and the tension fabric. I'll give you two examples here. Let me show you two examples here real quick. Let's go into Sacagawea, for instance, and let's look at one kit. And within a kit, we'll look at this one. It'll say at the bottom, you'll see includes all tension fabric and direct print graphics shown. So what you see is what you get. But let's go into Visionary Design. Oops, to do that. And to go. That one would work, but I want to do into Visionary Design. Let's see if I can pick one. And this is, again, this is not necessarily true. The newer Visionary Designs, we have included it all because you've made that request, but the older ones not so much. So let me find one. Let me like this one. The VK1069. That one will say includes tension fabric graphics only. You can see there, which means that it's going to include this large graphic. If that's tension fabric you choose for that to be tension fabric, it would include it. It would not include this direct print graphic, nor would it include this direct print graphic in that. And someone had asked a question about inline. Inline is obviously 10 by 10s and 10 by 20s. I'm not saying, I don't mean obviously, but inlines are generally considered to be 10 by 10, 10 by 20, 10 by 30s, as opposed to islands. Okay, you get just a second. Sacagawea are inline. Okay, and I think I've answered that question. So on inline, okay. Sacagawea, Magellan, and Perfect 10 are almost exclusively 10 by 10s and 10 by 20s. In fact, they are. Whereas when you jump into the islands, you're in Visionary Designs, and within Visionary Designs, it does include some SEGUE islands as well. We just kind of pull all the islands together to make it easier, so you don't have to leap from one product to another as far as the islands. You can look at all the islands within one category. If those are all the questions, again, I encourage you, if you have any other questions, give me a call or send me an email. Thank you again very, very much for your time. For joining us today on this webinar, and if you haven't signed up for the one for tomorrow on SEGUE, I encourage you to do so. I promise you it will be a very informative session. Thanks again.